What would you say would be one of the most innovative digital campaigns that you've seen recently? And it can either be a pure play or it can be something that leverages digital into the rest of the media mix. But it'd be interesting to hear from each of you just a innovative campaign that you've seen that you think was particularly good at using the platform. I'll throw it to Damien Burns to begin.
Okay, there's a few. Actually, I think it points to a challenge we have. I think the media agencies are fully on board in digital, and I think there's still a craving for the true creative masters from the creative side of the industry to really engage in digital. I don't think enough of them are. I still think it's some of the reason that the quality is perhaps lacking in digital content for marketing communications is because they haven't fully engaged, but we're now starting to see some fantastic work. I love the Tipex stuff that was done on YouTube, whereby you can interact with the video and suggest what the guy does next. I thought that was very good. It was almost a remix of Subservient Chicken from about 8 years ago, I think it was. There's some Desperados. I think it's a brand of liqueur. I don't think it's in the UK market. I don't know if you've seen that, but they've done some fantastic stuff on YouTube as well, with annotations, the ability to almost master the flow of the video based on your preferences. So I think that's been fantastic.
Okay, great. Damien Blackton.
There's some very good mobile ones around at the moment that I've seen. There was one, I think it was in Sweden, for the Mini Clubman. I don't know if anyone's seen it, where there was a car was put out as a sort of a prize for capturing a virtual Mini. There was a virtual Mini was put out onto via our website. One could download it to one's phone, but only one person could hold the car at any one time. And as soon as somebody downloaded it, it then sent out a message saying where that individual was in terms of their actual physical location, which meant in order to capture it from someone, you had to follow them and get to that location. There's a lot of footage out on the internet of people trying to avoid being found and then sort of having ambushed to take the car. At the end of the competition, the person who still had the car on their phone won the car. It generated a whole load of coverage. And it was just a very, very engaging way of using the medium. Similar link to that, there was one for a burger chain, which I forget, in Japan, I think, which was called iButterfly, where one downloaded a layer, it was an augmented reality thing to one's phone, went out in the street, you could see it around, and you could just see these butterflies. And if one captured them, I think you kind of sort of swatted this thing, you could you got a voucher to go into this fast food place. Again, I just thought it was a very engaging way of doing it, and it was also possible to share these things, so it became socially enabled and so on. And I think it's what I like about them is they're very immediate, but they just capitalise on the new technology, and they're very charming.
Right.
For me, it's things that capture opportunities, so the things that follow the trends. So you had Groupon last week offering 2 tickets to the royal wedding, £8, and a glass of house wine. There's some examples that I gave you. Damien's listed a number of the ones that I was going to say, but I think probably the most clever thing I've seen this year was Amazon MP3 using their Twitter account during the Super Bowl. So you have the Super Bowl, something like 50% of advertisers preceded their TV ads online on YouTube. But Amazon, what they did, so it's Amazon MP3, they were tweeting during the Super Bowl. So whenever you saw a montage that used music or a car ad that used a particular song, anything like that, Amazon would instantly tweet to their 1.5 million followers, just saw this on the Super Bowl, here's the link to download the track. So they were piggybacking what everybody else was doing and using it to drive commerce and drive actual sales accordingly.
Were they actually advertising on the Super Bowl on TV? No.
So no advertising on the actual program. They were just sitting there tweeting, knowing that people are following them while other things are happening on the TV, which, again, tying it together, but clever way of doing it.
Right. How is the digital spend drivers changing in terms of advertisers' decisions to spend in digital? how are the kind of primary drivers and what they're spending on or how they're spending changing, say, in the last 12 months? Start with you, Damien Blackman.
Right, I think everyone recognises that it's only going one way. It's rare to find an advertiser that tries digital out and then decides, no, I've had enough of that, I'm going to switch back to radio. I think there seems to be two sort of drivers, I guess. One is because audience consumption is changing, so there's a natural shift over from TV onto online video and so forth, and that's something which we're all going to work through. But I think there's also there's a pull effect that again, as advertisers try out highly accountable techniques such as search and affiliate marketing and buying on these targeted impressions on ad exchanges and so forth, it's pulling them in. And so we're now rather than having a discussion with a client, which we had a few years ago, which would be, right, I've got $500,000, how do I make the best use of it? Well, the discussion is more about how much money can I get into the market and into the auction at a particular cost per acquisition. So it's changing the way that we're budgeting for not even campaigns, where we're budgeting for marketing.
Damien Burns, anything to add?
Might take a slightly different tack as opposed to...
Pull the mic to you just a little bit.
I was going to say it might take a slightly different tack as opposed to perhaps channel usage and look at the geographic insights that are being derived. If you look at the numbers and the success metrics within certain markets, we're seeing a lot of advertisers, and I can only talk from my own personal perspective and engagement, looking at the UK and US as being prime focus areas and also areas where they've kind of delivered this proficiency in digital and scale in digital that isn't replicated in other markets perhaps that are lagging the UK and US. It's a big frustration for a lot of advertisers when they see the numbers. In some markets, they're actually a bigger presence in terms of products sold, yet they're not capitalising on the opportunity in digital in those particular markets. I think the agencies are actually doing a fantastic job in communicating that, taking, like I said, these like-for-like metrics from multiple markets and communicating that to clients and showing the opportunity that's there. So on a geographic sense, I'm seeing a big, almost magnetic pull from markets outside the UK and US. I find it very interesting.
I think the idea of spend is interesting. So I think traditionally there was this whole thing of share of voice, share of market. So if you had X% share of voice, you could expect X% share of market. If you look at it now as the idea of share of voice, what does that mean? It's not just competing with other advertisers, but it's competing with user-generated content. It's competing with skateboarding dogs we were referencing earlier. So you've got the share of voice is an interesting, how do you actually manage that? So first of all, you can see money shifting slightly from paid into more content distribution. But on the flip side, you've got the idea that earned media and conversations as social will replace paid advertising, which has been bandied around. I don't think works, because at the end of the day, paid media has predictability. So you know that if you buy this many impressions, you will deliver this many impressions. Whereas conversations and those kind of bits, if it takes off, great. If it doesn't, then you've got a problem, because production lines don't shut down, factories don't close because, sorry, my viral campaign didn't work. So you've kind of got this, there's still going to be paid media, and I think the way that it's delivered is getting more clever in the targeting, more clever in the delivery and the systems involved in it. So you've kind of got content and spending money more intelligently coming through.
So whereas content's a driver and social is a big impact, at the end of the day, it's also about balance and making sure you're not overemphasizing any one thread.
You've got to make sure your content's seen.
Yeah,
is kind of the key with it. So with so much content out there, you need to give it a big push in order for anyone to actually see it, first of all, let alone care about it. So there's going to be a balance between them.
The metrics that Damien mentioned earlier were mostly performance metrics. I suppose there's still a bit of an argument over how much of an effect, there's certainly data to support it, but how much of an effect that digital has on brand. You didn't mention brand in the answer. Is that less recognized, more recognized, or are people solely focused on the performance side of the business? I'll start with Damien on the end.
Actually, if it was an omission, I apologise, but I just wanted to say geographically. The brand side has been a question. I mean, if you look at the current investment levels, they are predominantly focused on performance media, direct response, if you will. There is a burgeoning area around brand advertising. There's a lot of research that we're doing hand in hand with the agencies and advertisers around what is the impact of adding digital to your media schedule or your campaign, and what is the incremental impact of that. And we've just done some work with LG actually that showed the impact of reaching more of your target audience via adding YouTube, for example, to a TV schedule. But there becomes a point on TV where you get to a saturation point where it becomes uneconomic to keep investing in the channel. But other platforms, and I'm not just talking about YouTube, can deliver incremental reach and add to the cost efficiency of that campaign. And we're just seeing the fruits of those labours in delivering insights around that arena now. So the LG one, I don't know if anyone's seen it, but it's just gone public, showing the incremental uplift and cost efficiency of adding a video platform like YouTube to the mix. And I think it's going to keep going, and I think it's going to be driven by the really smart people. I think you need fluency in the canvas to be able to exploit that canvas. And like I said, there was a slight lag, I think, and now they're coming on board. So those creative geniuses and people who really understand what the brand is trying to achieve in terms of communication metrics, they're now on board in digital. We're seeing some of the big creative shops come up with most fantastic ideas around how to do this brand advertising online.
Eamon?
I don't think there are any brand advertisers who are not interested in digital media. And I think there's some just very interesting opportunities for them. Whereas with, I suppose, older paid for media, everything just seems to be about messages. It's if you're advertising a soft drink or something, you run an ad where you tell them that it's refreshing. But with the use of digital media, with digital technologies, you can run things like with branded applications, which will deliver a refreshing experience through behaviour in media. And I think these digital technologies, because they're interactive, because these devices have utility, they're communications devices and transaction devices, it means that we can deliver an entirely different kind of communication. One which is it's a genuine behavioural experience rather than just telling something, which that builds a much greater emotional connectivity with people, which is what brands are looking for.
Nick, turning the question ever so slightly different, you mentioned content as a driver. Do you see evidence with your clients in looking at investing substantially more in creating their own content for owned media? And I'll use an example, and I'm still not quite sure. I believe the quote, I probably took the notes down wrong, but the CMO of HP quoted that he had something like 85 million unique users coming to HP sites. And one could ask how many of those were complaining about their printer not working, but there is a volume of audience that are coming to his sites, and he doesn't have to do anything in order for that engagement to happen. Possibly if he kept them there with more content, what if he hired a bunch of tech journalists and started writing about technology within the HP sites? Is that a trend, or is that more of an anomaly?
I think there are a couple of thoughts here. So the first one is, if you go back to our idea of people using the web whilst they're watching TV, you've got the idea that, let's just take that example, TV ads have still got to function as a 30-second spot. They still need to deliver the traditional low involvement type of messaging. But they also need to have some kind of way for the active audience to go off to do something. So it's, buy my product, it's great. If you want to find out more, here's a Facebook page, here's an app, here's something else for you to do. And then you build the content behind it. So you've got campaigns that function across those kind of layers. You've then got the separate piece, which is about thinking about your content and your properties online. So I think one of the interesting things, using your HP example, is what you find is a number of people who were traditionally relying on publishers to get their message out there, some of them now have a bigger audience than the publishers they used to rely on to distribute the message. So, and that's naturally happening, a lot of it. It's coming through natural search, it's coming through some of the paid initiatives as well. So the trick is then steering people into the right places. If it's people going to moan about their printer, then get them to the place where they can moan about their printer, deal with them, help them quickly, and then get them off again. If it's about kind of more of these kind of immersive things where it's product showcases and it's having a virtual showroom, different way of doing it, you need to think about the content differently. But there are different things you can promote, and it's just trying to work out how best to match that with your other marketing, and particularly with your kind of paid media advertising, how you fulfill the TV ad or the outdoor, the newspaper, etc.
Excellent. Do we have any questions from out? Yeah, can we get a mic up to Haj? Just right here. Shout in the meantime.
Hi, I'm Harjit from eBay Advertising. I've just got a quick question. Damien, you showed earlier a great example of eBay and how we've taken mobile commerce from 600 million 2 years ago to 2 billion last year, which included iPhones, iPads, Android, etc. One of the things we talk about at eBay is brand commerce, whereby not only can we allow people to, get our users to engage with the brand, but it actually drives sales as well. Again, Nick, the thing you spoke about ROI as well, so it fits into a lot of what you guys are saying. Just wanted to get your view on anything else you've seen, and just generally, how you see that's going, whereby it's not just about brand, it's not just about performance, where people can actually try and deliver both at the same time.
Branded performance. Again, there's hundreds of examples.
Sorry, just pull the mic.
Sorry, is this specific to the mobile sector?
No, just in terms of where people are using, online to drive sales, if not online, often offline as well.
I tell you what I really like is on the FMCG sector, where they had a belief that their products were low interest. So, for example, I'll give you a really mundane example, toothpaste. We used to have the argument, people used to say, why would I have search listings around Colgate or McLean's? And then they started thinking about it very differently, and they started thinking about the category they're in. What are the brand credentials? What is the DNA of that brand? What does it represent? And therefore, instead of owning a phrase like toothpaste or toothbrush, they started thinking about dental care. How do you, how do we deliver our insights that have helped develop this product to be the pinnacle toothpaste? You see where I'm going? And I've seen a lot of that now come to fruition, whether it's Dove or it's another FMCG brand that said, well, what sector are we in? What do we want to communicate? And they're using, YouTube channels, whether it comes to beauty, for example, tips, etc., like that, or Facebook pages where people can, for example, shape the product, I guess. I still think, though, that the involvement of the consumer with a brand is a really interesting area, but also one fraught with risks as well as opportunity. I'm not sure it's in brands' DNA currently to engage with consumers in that immediate sense. You sometimes build an expectancy that you can't deliver on, whether that's a flood of messaging and questions coming in to you that you can't answer because you don't have the capacity to do so, or you have a critique of your product that actually you wouldn't want to go down that road. I think on the brand performance experience area, performance is critical to brand, because people's expectations are around the brand linked to performance. And if you're not authentic, the digital arena is a very dangerous place to be. So when your claims, your messaging, the way you're positioning your product, if you don't live up to those brand truths, you're going to be found out pretty quickly. So I hope I've answered some of your question there.
And also, just to add, one reason for the question is a few briefings I've been to recently, one of which was a global sportswear brand. Normally you'd go in, have a big brand proposition for them, etc. This time we're getting questions from people saying, oh, by the way, we want to drive traffic, we want to drive X% incremental sales, and it's getting a bit closer from some of the briefings we've seen recently.
Right.
Which is why I was asking.
Sure.
Nick, do you want to follow on the social side of that while we look for another question?
It's not so much the social side, it's more to do with commerce. So commerce is an interesting area. You've got kind of people who've been like eBay and sites like that have been working with commerce online for however long. I think once you start moving to normal traditional kind of brands, the idea of selling direct is very different to selling through a retailer, through someone else. So it's not just about setting up a store or having the kind of mechanisms online to do it, you've got to think about all the real world stuff as well, how you're going to fulfill it, what the warehousing is, the supply chains, all those kind of things. So you've got commerce, so that's the first piece. The second thing is, if I'm selling direct to a consumer now, how does that impact on my relationships with the traditional retailers who've been selling my products? What happens there? So it's a much bigger picture than just setting up the ability to sell online. For kind of more the offline brands, the more traditional ones, you've got to think about all sorts of different things. So if it's tough when it comes to marketing to have different departments aligned, so paid and the website controllers and the PR customer service people, as soon as you start moving into other areas of the business, it gets that much harder. Will it happen? Yes, I think it will. Will it happen overnight? No, I think it will be incremental bits, as you say, and then it will take a while to get through, but I think it will come eventually. And I think some of the really interesting bits are then when you look at how people are building things. So the experiments on Facebook with F-commerce, the mobile commerce, the different areas. In trial and error, I think things are happening, but a while before this scale.
Tom Denford.
Hi, Tom Denford, ID Comms. I just wanted to come back to some references that you've made about paid media. And Nick, you kind of ended on the role of paid media. And I want to ask you about the role of paid media. Amongst these kind of three protocols that we now talk about, the paid, own and earn, with particular reference to the fact that I think you're suggesting that paid media is just like a giant, very expensive signpost which drives people to deeper experiences. But to me that feels very luxurious and very expensive, and there's been some quite notable failures from people like Cadbury that have recently decided to can a whole initiative around driving people from TV to online experiences. Complete disaster by all accounts. You know, and another example was that irritated me a little bit was Smirnoff Experience, who developed an amazing global offline, offline real world experience, and then decided to stick it on TV ads all around the world, which kind of ruined the magic because it was generating such great conversation. So there seems to be a tendency for big brands to think, right, throw some money on TV, make this work harder. And paid media, big media, seems to have kind of lost its role other than just being a big signpost towards other experiences. And I just wanted to see what you thought the role of paid media is now in this kind of new concept. So from my perspective, you got, again, a couple of things here where the idea of you reach out to 10 special influencers and they spread your content or message or whatever it is, and it goes viral and you hit millions of people. It simply doesn't work. The advocacy piece, it's all based around thinking for the 1940s, 1950s about how people don't take messages directly from mass media, they take it from an expert in their community, which is fine. That kind of idea of two-step flow, it's if I'm thinking of buying a car, I may ask someone I know who knows about cars. He may tell me something. What it doesn't mean is if I'm told something about that car, it doesn't mean I'm then going to go off and tell 2 people who are going to go off and tell 4 people and so on and so on. So the whole idea of how influence flows, I think it just doesn't seem to work in the real world. What you seem to find is people talk about things because other people talk about them. So if there's a mass of, this morning there was on Twitter trending topics, Martin Sheen was a topic. He was on Desert Island Discs, so he was on Radio 4. Twitter users are now talking about Martin Sheen being Charlie's dad and all the rest of it, and it's spreading in other things. But because it's on trending topics, I know about it. I'm now telling you, you know about it. So it's this thing, there was a mass behind it. And if you look at any of these platforms, it's the idea that the rich get richer. So YouTube, most watched videos, Twitter trending topics. Traditionally, things like movie reviews. People want to go and see the most popular film. People want to go and see the film that won the Oscar, etc., etc. So mass drives more people. So when you start thinking about paid media, in inverted commas, how it drives things, it's not necessarily the TV campaign. You need to use a TV campaign to push people to something. That can work. You look at things like Year Valley in the X Factor, where they concentrated all their spend into one break. That was their one spot a week. And because of that, it made enough noise for people to notice it. What you see are these new things coming through, like the Twitter ads, where you can buy a promoted trending topic. you can give something critical mass immediately, and then you can attract more people. It's the YouTube promoted videos. It's paid media mechanisms that put something into the spotlight, I think, is, for me, the key behind things, which may or may not involve TV. Sorry, ran through.
Damien?
So if I could just, I think it's a bit simpler than that. I think the two examples you cite, which I'm not privy to, so I don't know whether the Cadbury's one was a failure or whatever, but it sounds like vision to execution didn't happen. So there's an expectation for a brand in terms of what they promised and then what they delivered, maybe. And they realised that what they were delivering wasn't up to expectations, so there's some sort of drop-off, I don't know. But it sounds like some fundamentals of coordination and communication aren't happening there. And was it Smirnoff you mentioned, was that the nightclub around the world thing? Right?
Yeah.
So it's quite a weird thing to do, is to go from interactive consumer involvement, help us shape this stuff, and then go to a one-way platform at the end of it. Is quite interesting, I guess. It sounds like an execution issue to me.
Damien Blackton, just changing the line of questioning slightly. I'm 20 years now working as a media owner. Media owners have a view, which is the current pricing is essentially a infinite push towards commoditizing and driving prices down for inventory, which is a wash. Do you think media owners are doing a good enough job of showing the value they think they represent? And if not, what should they be doing to prove it better to planner buyers?
I think clearly it is a media, but whatever Damien says, it's still a media buyer's job to reduce the prices wherever possible. Unfortunate or unfortunate fact of life in sometimes. Media owners, I think, deliver two things to marketers. They deliver an audience and they deliver a context. And I think the premium publishers are offering still deliver some fantastic context. And whatever we all talk about, and I was banging on about impact by impact, audience-based targeting, that's great, and it works very, very well. We can behaviorally target people. However, that doesn't mean to say contextually targeted advertising doesn't work. That was one of the first things we discovered when we were comparing behavioral stuff with the contextual stuff. So that's the first thing that the publishers are still offering. It is very, very valuable. The other one is the audience-based data, and I do understand that there's a lot of publishers who are rightly very nervous about letting third parties tag up their sites with a view to then using that third party data to target advertising, and I think a lot of them are nervous that some of these third parties will tag their sites. People will learn about the audiences on those specific publishers and then use that data to target people elsewhere. That's very reasonable. However, we can't uninvent this stuff, and audience-based targeting is not going to go away. And I think those which have tried it out have discovered that it's a new revenue stream, which enables them to charge more for some of their existing audiences, and as an additional data layer which they can sell to third parties.
But I think you hit the nail on the head. There is at least some revenue stream, whereas there's a prevalent practice now with cookies being dropped out of creatives that then allow people to target or test audiences and then go retarget them elsewhere, which isn't necessarily the premium that you'd pay to go in that contextual environment. And the AOP is pushing back, but at the moment there is nothing stopping people other than ethics, I guess, from doing it.
I think things will find their own natural level. I suspect there are some premium publishers who are hoping that the forthcoming EU regulations will be pretty draconian, because it means that it will put a greater value on perhaps some of their environments. The reality is there is an oversupply of content, and things will find their own natural level. It's as simple as that.
We've got time for probably one or two more questions and we'll wrap up. If you've got a burning question, get your hand up, please. But right there in the back.
Matt Gill from ID Comms. Damien, you touched on the topic of talent, and I was just wondering if you think agencies have still got a long way to building their technical understanding of digital platforms in-house to come up with more effective as well as innovative ideas. Yes.
So in terms of talent, it's a really interesting one because there's an immense resource already of talent within agencies. I just think there's a chance they're doing the wrong stuff. They're doing too kind of low-level activities, and actually they should be freed from that. I think somebody said that if there's something a server can do, you should let the server do it, and elevate the role of the agency person to free up strategic stuff. I think that is one way of looking at it. The analysis should say, what do we currently do that could be maybe more efficient, or how can we free up our resource here in the right way. Second piece is building talent, because this digital world just keeps spinning. I can't keep up. Google had I think 600 product changes to search last year. Probably about 25% of those you absolutely have to be fluent in, otherwise you can't drive the Google car for your clients. Compare that to TV. Right, so that was Google. Maybe in a couple of months they had 20, 30 changes that really mattered and you needed to know about it. The last 2 decades, TV's probably had 3 or 4 major changes that you needed to know about to be able to drive that car. So the proficiency need within the digital spectrum is immense. How do we support that? Well, the agencies already are. So they are training people. We've got accreditation schemes at Google, for example, and I'm sure other players have the same. But we've invested millions in e-learning modules, hands-on workshops with the guys at agencies, and so that they pass certain sort of tests and build it up. It's not enough. I think there's a lot more needs to be done, and I think Google has a responsibility to the marketplace to support that. And I think you're going to see more of that coming from Google and other players, I'm sure, because there's no point if we're selling cars you can't drive. It's not a good business model. So we need to keep refreshing the talent and skill sets.
Okay, I'm going to ask one last question for each of them, and actually to make it slightly trickier, if you can answer in 1 sentence or less. The question being, if there was one thing that you wish advertisers got about digital, what would it be? Starting with you, Damien, on the end.
It's not rocket science.
Okay. Said the technology player. Damien Blackton.
I think that that agencies can make a business contribution to their success rather than just a marketing success.
And Nick?
I think how the industry deals with data and insight. So there's a great quote that I love, which is, many people in the industry use data and insight like a drunk person uses a lamppost. So they use it for support, not for illumination. And that's kind of something where, that's where I'm hoping things will keep going and keep driving forward.
What a fantastic way to close. Thank you very much for attending.